As deportations escalate, construction sites across the country are already feeling the ripple effects, as the sector was already dealing with labor shortages before the Trump administration entered the White House. Today, I am joined by George Carrillo, CEO of the Hispanic Construction Council. He will talk to us about how widespread immigration crackdowns are threatening America's infrastructure, and also tell us about a bipartisan legislative proposal he is helping lead that would offer work visas to undocumented construction workers in exchange for background checks, fines, and taxes. Let's get into it. As we are witnessing massive deportations nationwide, what are the real world consequences you're seeing on the ground, especially in construction and other essential sectors that you are involved in, when ICE raids and fear of deportation sweep through Latino communities?
Sure. So, talking about from the economical side of things, it delays projects. Whenever there's a raid, the following day, not as many people come back to work. And right now, I think as a country, everybody is starting to understand because there really hasn't been a conversation about the impact that Hispanics have on the construction industry. And people are starting to open their eyes and understand, wow, there is a huge impact here. There are a lot of Hispanics that are in the construction industry, but not all Hispanics are undocumented immigrants. But we estimate that there's about 20%. So when you're looking at over 4 million people in the construction industry, and we can average somewhere between 700 and a million people, that's a lot of people. When we think about already a workforce shortage of 500,000 people, we're behind over 20% of construction projects. Reports are consistently coming out about the slowing and the cooling of the construction industry this year. And so it's taking a hit. There was a report that just came out that I was reading the other day. Multifamily housing development is down nearly 30% from last year. That's devastating. Multifamily housing complexes house and provide homes and shelters for a lot of people throughout the United
And
States.
and this is due to labor shortages that were already present before these massive deportations started taking place.
Yes. So
So
we have that problem.
how is the current political climate making it worse, and what are the contractors telling you privately?
So privately, everybody is talking about. So developers have the money and the resources to build more projects. The problem is who's going to build it? And so they don't have necessarily consumer confidence that projects are going to be done in time. So they don't want to put up all that money. They don't want to start, doing land developments, pulling permits, start excavating, hiring general contractors when there's no guarantee that there's going to be a stable labor force. So that is also cooling the market too.
Gosh, and what's the risk to the American economy considering how tied immigration is to workforce stability in fields like construction and agriculture and hospitality, which I guess they're sectors that are seeing similar problems.
Well, I think that there's certain industries that are critical, when we're having these conversations of immigration. I'll give you a quick example. During COVID, what we saw and where really essential workers came into play outside of like law enforcement and nurses really was the agriculture sector. Because when that sector started to not be able to show up to work because they were getting sick, that's when people started realizing, oh my God, there are other people outside of the typical essential worker that we think of, and that was ag. And so in this conversation of immigration, it's the same thing. Agriculture is an essential part of our economy because not just because of our economy, but our way of life, because it's what feeds us. Everybody needs to eat, and we need their support in that. But construction is that other very critical piece that I tell people all the time. All roads lead to construction because without us, there's no offices, There's no housing, there's no roads, there's no churches, there's no sewer, there's no power, there's no nothing without us. We have to build it, and on top of that, we have to maintain that. So I've been telling people we need to be very careful because what makes us very powerful and unique as a country is because of the infrastructure that we have. What separates us from a third world country is that same infrastructure. So that will be the human casualty is that if our infrastructure collapses, you can say goodbye to clean drinking water and sewage and roads that we can drive on. And we are going to look a third world country if we don't get this right.
You and the Hispanic Construction Council recently introduced a work visa plan to Congress. What are the core elements of the proposal, if you could briefly explain, and how would
Sure.
it help stabilize industries facing labor gaps?
So what it says is that this is very specific towards construction. And
Mhm.
in this policy proposal, we're saying if someone's been here for at least 5 years, they've been in the construction industry for 3 years, then they would be eligible as long as they don't have any other criminal background. That they would be eligible for a work visa. They would pay a fine as a form of restitution for accountability purposes, and then we would make them into taxpayers. We would then take, the this new revenue that's coming into the government, and we're asking for that to be reinvested into the Workforce Development Act that currently the Labor Department um, manages that program. And so we're trying to build the future of the workforce with this additional revenue because right now we don't have that workforce. It's an aging workforce. The United States construction workforce is very old. And so we need money directed in the right direction to be able to provide those trade apprenticeship programs the legs that it needs in order to develop the future.
And what kind of reception are you seeing on the Hill for this?
So we've actually gotten some really great reception from it so far. We believe we will have bipartisan support from both a Republican and a Democrat to sponsor this bill. And so we hope to see it in the House and in the Senate soon.
And you just introduced it when?
Last week.
Okay. And when are we going to get an update as to if it's moving forward or not? Do you know?
We hope that within the next 2 weeks. We've already been asked to do some additional things on the bill so that we can get legislative review. And so we're definitely moving very quickly and we're moving in the right direction.
Was this made primarily to save businesses or to protect workers?
This was primarily to um, it was primarily to protect the workforce, but also provide a humanitarian response to what's happening right now. So we looked at both of those, right? We know that we understand that the Republican Party is in power right now. So if we went with it just with this like humanitarian view on it, no one would listen to us. We really had to go through this process of saying, okay, what makes sense and being able to advocate for what we need and what will others then rise up and say finally, hey, we need change. And so we took an economical view on it and translating it basically to people's bottom lines, whether they're small business owners or in the construction industry, or all the people that around the construction industry, like the supply chain, all will be affected by by this sector.
Yeah. Do you see this as a strategy that might work for other sectors, putting, a price tag to on deportations? And do you think this is what's going to work going forward, going sector by sector and, advocating for workers that way?
Yes, I believe so because what I've seen is that there is a lack of empathy when we talk about the human toll of this. that's what amazes me is that the human toll should actually should be more powerful than the economic toll in my eyes, simply because the work that our undocumented immigrants do are some of not just the hardest jobs, but also some of the most critical jobs. Something that's rarely ever talked about is the care that our undocumented community provides for our families. They typically are the ones that are watching our youth, and they're also watching and caring for our elderly population. That's something that's rarely ever talked about.
Mhm.
But those are the critical caregivers that fail to get any sort of recognition, but they take care of two of our most vulnerable populations. And so people aren't necessarily interested in the empathy of what that means for their own family. But the minute you start affecting people's checkbooks, that's when all of a sudden now they have empathy, now they have recognition, now they all these feelings start to come about because it's affecting them. Now I don't have anybody to watch my kids. How am I supposed to go to work? How am I supposed to go to work, or how am I supposed to take care of my family if they can't watch my elderly parents or grandparents or family members that are disabled? Who's going to watch that population? That is primarily done by our undocumented immigrant community.
George, thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I think we've covered it all.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.